Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, and we are so excited to continue month of May, our Women in Sports Month. Last week, we had on Krista McDonald from Norwood High School, and she was a phenomenal guest. I had so much, so many alumni that reached out to me of hers, both from Braintree and Norwood, just talking about how special of a person she was, and we were honored to have her on here. And this week, we have another guest on here, someone who's a real good up-and-coming young coach in the girls hockey world in the state of Massachusetts. Was a top-notch high school player herself, played collegiately Division I at Boston University, and is now a head coach in the state of Massachusetts. So we're really excited to have her on. I love having young coaches on here to hear their energy, to hear their fire. And it really kind of jacks me up in a way too and gets me excited about coaching. So I love having guests on here that have energy and bring a lot to the table. So our current coach that we have on here today, is the head hockey coach at Arlington Catholic High School for the girls team, played Division I hockey, as I mentioned to you before, at Boston University. Even played a little bit in Europe after that. We'll be talking about that today as well. And played at Arlington Catholic High School. Was one of the best players in the state when she played. So, no stranger to Massachusetts hockey at all. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, from Arlington Catholic High School, Natalie Flynn.
Hey, Anthony. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Of course, we're really lucky to have you on here today, and we're really excited to have you on. So, I mentioned that you're a pretty good player yourself. So I always like to start things off, especially when I have a coach who played and was pretty good at it, just to talk a little bit about your playing career before we really jump into your coaching career. And right away, I mentioned that you were one of the better, high school players in the state of Massachusetts at, your time when you were in high school. I mean, for young girls out there a little bit, obviously I mentioned you played at Boston University, but maybe talking about the decision-making, when you got to like your junior year or senior year in college, high school, and you really thought, hey, I'm going to pursue this to the college level. What was the thought process as far as choosing the right school for you, choosing the right program for you, and what you saw for yourself the next 4 years?
Yeah, so playing hockey in college was always definitely a dream of mine. That's what I wanted to do. But also you have to be realistic and not necessarily that's always going to work out. So you have to focus on the school itself too and, what draws you to that school. If you want to go to a school in a city or in the rural area, the academic fit, what you want to major in, school size, things like that. It's always something to consider. And I was lucky enough, hockey worked out at BU for me. That was my dream school. It's where I always wanted to go and play. But again, sometimes that doesn't work out. You don't always get in, so you have to have other options too, and can't necessarily, rely on that one school to get in. You have to have other options too. So I had some D3 schools I was looking at, thinking about doing that if BU didn't work out, but thankfully enough, BU worked out and I got to play there too, which was awesome. And it was a dream come true, honestly, being a local kid and going to school in Boston. Couldn't have worked out better. And I miss it every day. I wish I could go back, honestly.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And you're talking Boston University hockey. Everyone knows in this area, Boston University hockey, men or women's, is, top-notch programs all around. So, before you went to BU, I know that when we talked on the phone a little bit, part of kind of before going to Boston University was going to a prep school for a year, doing another senior year, and you went to Cushing Academy. Just talk a little bit about the growth as an athlete. You're going to a school to really focus on hockey. Academics and hockey, but hockey really becomes your full-time job. Talk about that year process of an 18, 19-year-old woman really trying to figure things out a little bit, live on your own maybe for the first time, and kind of really focusing on one thing that is going to lead to the next step of your life.
Right. Yeah. Cushing was an unbelievable experience for me. It really did prepare me mostly to live on my own. I have never been away from home on my own, figuring that out. So that was huge for the college process. And hockey wise too, just, the game was a little bit faster. I would say every game that you play at Cushing is like your top games in the CCL here in high school in Mass. So it's like the Austin Preps, the St. Mary's, you're playing those games, constantly every day. So the level was a bit faster, a bit stronger. That definitely prepared me for BU. It worked out that the coach at BU wanted me to do kind of a gap year, an extra year. That was my reasoning for going to Cushing. But not necessarily that's the route everyone has to take or the route that you have to go. It's not for everyone. That was my route and what I had to do, and it prepared me well. But then again, it's not for everyone. I don't think I could have done 4 years at Cushing. I loved AC and my years there, but 1 year was definitely good enough and prepared me well enough.
Yeah, it's a different world, in your
Yeah,
lifestyle. I mean, well, first of all, like living on your own, like doing your own laundry, but like being responsible for like things that maybe your parents would do before. I mean, any 18,
exactly.
19-year-old kid transitions through that. But on top of it, it's a full-time job there. I mean, you're there to play sports and better yourself and get to that next level. And, there's not a lot of time to really have a social life and do other things except really focusing on that. So I think that's really important. And it's going to speak volumes to you, obviously, when we talk more about your coaching career later on, how you had that advantage to really instill that into your girls. So awesome stuff, coach. I really love it. And then obviously you went on to play the Boston University. I mean, when I grew up with Boston University hockey. I'm a Medford guy myself. I mean, Sean Bates was like my hero, in 95, 96, he's playing at BU. I mean, you got Chris Drury, Jay Pandolfo, Mike Greer. I mean, I grew up with that stuff. So knowing that you played hockey there at BU, especially in that time period and later on, I mean, like I said, BU program is just arguably the mecca of hockey. Some might say UMass is now in the last few years winning the
Yeah.
championship, but BU hockey is BU hockey. I mean, talk about playing at that level, because I can't imagine, like you mentioned, game speed. And game speed always picks up at any level that you move up to. But you're playing D1, you're playing with some of the best players in the country. I mean, talk about how much faster the game got once you got to Boston University.
Yeah, the game was 10 times faster than I could even imagine. I like to think, one of my strongest, probably one of my only good skill on the ice is my skating, but I I was struggling to even keep up that first practice. It was an eye opener. Like what I say to everyone, it's like you kind of come as the best player from your high school team going to play D1, but when you get there, everyone is the top player from their team, like even from their state, from their area. So it was unbelievable how fast it was. But I had some great seniors to look up to as a freshman and how hard they worked on the ice, off the ice. So that just pushed me in practice to work that much harder just to try and keep up with them. But yeah, it was unbelievable playing there, playing in Walter Brown. Just the history in that rink alone is crazy. I grew up going to those games there. Some of those players you were talking about, and it's just unbelievable there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a rocking atmosphere. I mean, maybe I was little too, so maybe it was not, maybe it wasn't as rocking as I thought as like a 12, 13-year-old kid. But I remember the place was like deafening. I mean, it was like those games were on like ESPN national television. I mean, BU at the time was unreal when I used to go to those games. So,
Oh,
and what's really cool is you guys played at Walter Brown.
mhm.
And I know BU built their newer hockey arena, the Aganis, and you have your own like hockey rink you guys play. I mean, talk about an awesome recruiting chip and an awesome way to really get girls to come to the school. Is you
Absolutely.
play in your own rink. I mean, how cool was it to have your own rink and have your giant locker rooms? And I'm sure the band and the whole 9 yards that you got there as well at your games that I remember from when I went there at Walter Brown Arena back in the day.
Oh yeah. So yeah, the boys play in Aganis. That was built in like 2008, I think. But we've been in Walter Brown the whole time since they moved there, and it's unbelievable there. Like with the band in there, and we get at least probably 300 fans. Not as many as the guys, obviously, but in Walter Brown, that's enough. It gets loud. It's rocking in there with the bands and everyone. And I say this to everyone: if we played in Aganis, like it wouldn't be the same. It would be quiet. We wouldn't be hearing the crowd as well as we do in Walter Brown. So we love it there. Like we don't want to move. Like we want to stay at Walter Brown because it's unbelievable there. Just yeah, playing. It's quick too. The ice is quick. It's a little bit of smaller rink, and I know for away teams, it's one of their favorite rinks to play at too. So
Hey.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool atmosphere, a cool spot. And yeah, it's a great experience to be able to tell people you play there for sure. I mentioned a little bit after your college career. I know that when we talked on the phone and did our little pre-phone interview that, you played outside of college, you played over in Europe a little bit. I mean, maybe just what was the decision making going into life after, college hockey? I know we had Chelsea Goldberg on here from the PWPHA back in February. And she kind of talked about taking some time off. She had played collegiately in Northeastern and then eventually kind of got back into playing the PWHBA, PWHL, and then the NWHPA. Wow, a lot of letters there.
I know.
But talking about the transition, what was the thought process for you after college ended and, your hockey career and saying, hey, I want to give this one last shot or give this maybe a little bit of pursuit outside the continent?
Yeah, so thankfully now there's a bit more options after college. I would say 5 or 6 years ago, we didn't have this NWHL, CWHL, now the PWHPA.
PA, yeah. See what I mean? The letters is not easy.
Yeah. But yeah, it used to just be the Olympics, really. And that's, obviously a dream for every player too, but only the lucky few get to make it that far. But so, yeah, we kind of looked into, so me and 3 other of my roommates, actually, my teammates too at the time, we all ended up going to Europe. It was either that or probably the NWHL. For me at least, I knew I wanted to keep playing, and Europe, Germany, actually just ended up being where I wanted to play. I figured if I could play another year and travel and get to see, different parts of the world, that's the best case scenario right there. So,
yeah. So
I ended up in Germany and I loved it. I was there for a few months, came back a bit earlier than I wanted to, but it was an awesome experience. And
what was the coolest thing you saw? What was the coolest thing you saw when you were over in Germany?
I went to Oktoberfest.
Okay.
But that was an absolute blast. I highly recommend it to experience it at least once. Okay. It was a great time, great experience, and you meet a lot of cool people from the U.S., but a lot of Germans there too, and a lot of just Europeans from all over go there. So yeah, it was a blast.
I'll add that to the bucket list and I'll take your word for it there. So obviously after, I know, playing over in Europe and coming home, there was a transition of, a job opened up, specifically the job that you have now, the Arlington Catholic girls hockey job. I coached Arlington Catholic. I went to Arlington Catholic. I know you did too. So we have that special, unique bond about Arlington Catholic. I mean, I love the school. I loved it as a student. I loved it as a coach. I, keep in touch with a lot of my players. I mean, keep in touch with a lot of people there. Just a tremendous spot. I mean, just talk about the I guess even just the opportunity to apply for the job of the school that you once played at and played pretty well at, and saying, hey, now this could be my program, maybe 8 to 10 years later.
Yeah, it's at the time, like as a player, I honestly it would be like I couldn't even imagine being back and coaching there. Like I would just think being 11th or 12th grade, like that would just be too far-fetched. But so now that I'm actually doing it, it's unbelievable. And I'm doing it with one of my teammates too, who I graduated with. She's the assistant coach. So I think looking back, if anyone said, oh, you and Jamie are going to be the coaches at AC, we would have just laughed. But it is an unbelievable opportunity. I'm so glad Mr. Shine, gave me the chance, because I never coached before this. So, but I'm glad as an alum I can come back and, help these younger players. I was in their shoes once, so just help them, help build the program and be a part of this team in kind of a different way now as a player. Now I'm a coach, and I love the school. Couldn't have better memories from there, couldn't be happier. So I'm very glad to be back and be part of it.
Yeah, it's cool. I think it's, I remember just getting the head coaching job there and that emotional rush that kind of goes through you, because there's a lot of memories that pop up in your head, and to kind of see yourself there, it's kind of surreal. So it's really cool to be able to talk to people about that, specifically the same school. But as a young coach, like you mentioned, right, you didn't really have head coaching experience or coaching experience for that matter going into the job. So going into an interview, trying to convince people, hey, my playing experience, my knowledge of the game, where I've been, is enough for me to come in here and know what I have to do. I mean, as a young coach, how did you attack the interview process as far as pitching yourself as really being the right person for the job?
Yeah, you have to go into it with confidence, and know, even though you don't necessarily have the experience, you are confident enough in your your playing experience and your history. Like, I went to AC, I played at Cushing, and I was at BU. So I've learned a lot through the years, being at these different schools, being under these great coaches, these great programs. So you just have to go into it with confidence and know that you can do the job, and just have faith in yourself. And if you have confidence in yourself, it's going to rub off. Mr. Shine's going to see it, or whoever you're interviewing with is going to see it, and they're going to have confidence in you too.
Yeah.
So
I think that's great advice. You have to go in there. Yeah, maybe I don't have the coaching background, but I have the knowledge of the game. And, you play D1 hockey. I'm sure you mentally developed as a player there and saw the game differently. And with speed, the game's more open, it's faster. You see things that you might have not have seen or been taught or thought of at the high school level. So you definitely come in with more experience, and obviously playing over in Europe, you're playing with some of the best players in the world. So it's not like you're just playing locally in a small area. So definitely having that knowledge, I'm sure it was a huge advantage. And obviously they made the right decision. I mean, I know when you came in, you took over a program that was struggling a little bit in the wins and loss column, and you were able to kind of really make a change year one. I'm going to ask you just two funny questions, because I just know as a head coach, like I know what your response is probably going to be, but I want to hear them anyways. How
okay.
many times did you say to yourself, man, I thought I knew a lot more about this game than I did once you started coaching? Did you ever say that to yourself? Like, I thought I knew a lot more than I really do.
Definitely, yeah. A lot, especially
Yeah.
first year, and especially when it comes to defense. Um, Definitely not my strong suit, but I mean, I know enough, and I can definitely give my input. But when it comes to hockey wise, at least, that was huge. But a lot of stuff off the ice too, more logistics stuff and stuff like that. I was like, damn, there's a lot more that goes into
It's
this than I thought.
overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I remember the same thing. I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, there's just so much to think about. And the second question I love asking coaches, especially when they're newer at it, is how many times do you say to yourself, oh, I have to do that too?
Yeah, a lot. Exactly.
Yeah.
But thank goodness for Mr. Shine, because he's been a great mentor and a big help for me when it comes to that stuff, and pointing me in the right direction in that regard. When it comes to banquets, or just putting some stuff together,
Yeah, banquets, like
team bonding.
fundraising, trying to get
Yeah.
your kids involved and maybe playing in a league or getting them for workouts. I mean, it is, yeah, it's nonstop. I mean, it's the reason I started this podcast, because people just, the game itself is like 25% of probably what you do overall. I mean, maybe a little more. Maybe I'm being like a little lenient. Maybe it's like 40%, but it's not much higher. And then there's that other aspect of it, the things that you're doing, when the game's not playing, or outside of season or in the sun. I mean, there's just a lot you do to prepare for a season that might only be 3 or 4 months in length, but it takes a
Exactly.
year to prepare for it. I mean, realistically.
And when
So
it comes quick too. Like, all of a sudden you got a week of tryouts, and then you got a game the next week. You just get rolling. So it's very important to prepare. And I learned that this year. Because I don't think my first year necessarily, I thought I was prepared, but you never are, especially when it's your first year. So that's huge. And definitely, I learned a lot from that.
yeah, and I mean, just kind of staying along the line of that. I mean, as far as like building the culture goes, like you got the job in there, like obviously, like you said, you have experience, you know the game really well. What was the culture that you really wanted to create in your program, as far as just what the expectations were for your players and them knowing what the expectations were?
Yeah, so obviously, I think any coach would say this. You want to build a culture and a program where girls, want to be there. They want to play. They want to show up to practice every day. They look forward to it, and they're having fun. That's the main goal as a coach, at least for me, my perspective. That's what I want. That's what I would want as a player. But also just, knowing your role. Not necessarily everyone's going to be, top line, forward, on the power play, on the PK, but maybe only get 2 or 3 shifts a game. But knowing your role and knowing everyone has a role on the team and is a part of the team, no matter where you are in the lineup or how much you play, working hard at practice, pushing your teammates, staying positive, all stuff like that. I mean, if you ask my players, I'm all about working hard, and I think that builds respect, and no matter how good you are, if you're skating hard, you're working hard, that's all you can ask as a coach, and that's what I want from my players. So that's definitely huge in our AC hockey culture right now anyways.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think everything you just said is a huge check mark. I mean, those are the things that you need in your program, and that's the type of stuff you need to instill or install to make sure that you have success for the long term. I feel like so many coaches always just try to come in and they just think they got to win, win, win. I mean, like that's awesome. Like that's best case scenario. You're always going to win, 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 but you're
Yeah.
trying to build sustainability over a time period. So it's really trying to develop your program from top really to bottom. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it's the truth. I mean, if you're not investing just as much time in your JV or your sub-varsity program or your freshman program, I mean, yeah, then you're reteaching everything every year. So it's kind of balancing that culture of knowing what the expectations are, understanding the hard work's involved. And it doesn't matter whether you're a senior or freshman. If there's a role for you on this team, we're going to find it for you and you're going to play it. Um, and
Absolutely.
and I love, like, my big thing with football, obviously I was more on the defensive side of the ball, but special teams, I love being involved in the special teams. I was like the one coach who would always volunteer for like punt or a kickoff because those can make or break games and you want to be in control of that and you want to prepare for it. Hockey special teams, we have penalty, power play and penalty kill. I want to talk about your thoughts about power play, right? Like, and we'll work maybe from the point down. You look for like people to have out there like the Fulton Reeds of the world? You looking for a girl who has a really hard shot that can put it through the net? Are you looking at like a PK Subban-esque, maybe like the quarterback at the point that moves around, more of that like offensive-minded defenseman? Or are you looking like a Megan Bozick who played at the University of Minnesota, who's just a phenomenal defenseman, all-around defenseman? I mean, from maybe the point down, how do you look to build your power play at the high school level?
So, well, I was lucky enough the past 2 years, so she graduated this year. Brenna Mulcahy had an absolute blast of a shot, like better than some D1 college players. Like she has the best shot in the state, hands down.
So you had Fulton Reed on your team.
So she was at the top of our power play. We were trying to work the puck to her or work the puck and to the slot in front. So we kind of had an umbrella going. I can say that now because we're going to have a completely different power play next year. I'm not giving away any secrets, but yeah, so we tried to work that. And my big thing was just move the puck, pass the puck as much as you can, tire out that PK, find a lane and get some shots. Hopefully Brenna, ripping it.
Now, do you have like, is your like number one power play? Is that like your first line? Do you just essentially put your best three players out there, or are you looking more from the chemistry aspect of it?
It's basically our top line. Yeah. And, our top two defense out there. You try and mix it up a little bit, maybe have a second line out there. It depends too, because sometimes our first line was just out there a minute and a half. Then the other team gets a penalty. So we got to put our second unit out there. So I try and have a kind of a little mix, but it's mostly our first line out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay. So how much time are you then investing, right? So you have, I'm guessing like 50-minute practice to an hour practice. How much are you invested in your special teams just from maybe the power play side of it for now?
Power play I'm probably working on once or twice a week if we're lucky. It's real tough with the 50-minute practice to get through everything you want to get through, and that sometimes goes on the back burner and more so just using the whiteboard, drawing it out. But my first season especially, we kind of had more time, more practices. We worked on it a lot, and we were kind of struggling with it a bit, scoring wise, and they weren't really getting it. It wasn't really flowing. But one game finally against Bishop Fenwick, we finally were moving the puck, found the seams. Brenna ripped it from the slot. We scored. So that was one of my favorite moments so far, coaching wise. Anyways, just to see that come together and finally click for the girls, and they got it. So that was nice.
Yeah, and just how important it is. I mean, you watch any NHL game, it's the power play makes or breaks you in a playoff series and makes or breaks you in a game. And you see teams win series because they get an extra 6 or 7 maybe penalties, power plays that they have, and they score on 2 or 3 of them, and those 2 or 3 goals win you a series. So it's real important. Yeah. Let me flip to the other side, penalty kill. What are you looking for as far as the 4 that you have out there? Again, is it more from a skill perspective, or is it kind of the people up top are like your wildest players? They'll take a shot, they'll block a shot, they kind of put their bodies on the line, I guess, a
Absolutely.
little bit.
Yeah, you want someone who's not afraid to block a shot, get in the lanes. PKs usually, are hardest workers out there, skating hard, getting in lanes and blocking pucks. That's what you want. But I would say the hardest part about those two, the special teams, is working on them at practice, because both our power play units and our PK units, they both know what each other's doing. They know what the power play is. They know who's going to shoot it, who's moving it, where everyone's supposed to be. So that kind of makes it a bit more tough. But we find a way. PK flips their sticks over, has their blade up, so they can't really touch the puck or anything like that. You get creative and try and figure it out that way. But it's good. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I'm a defensive guy, just minded in general. So any coach I talk to, like, I always sometimes just lean more towards asking them defensive questions. And I think, again, a penalty kill is important. I mean,
Absolutely.
especially if you're a team that's aggressive and gets called for penalties, or, you get put in tough situations.
Penalty box, that's for sure. We're always in there.
So see, you got to be really good at it then, right?
Yeah.
So that's great, and it's great to listen and pick your mind too. I mean, I was looking back on all my guests. You are the first hockey coach that I've had on here. I had a hockey player on here, but never a hockey coach. So
come on, really?
Yeah. No disrespect at all. I grew up playing hockey my entire life. Hockey world is, ironically enough, is like the one world that I don't really think I have a lot of connections in versus other sports. So you are kind of on an awesome month to begin with, but you're actually the first hockey coach I've had on here, period, male or female. So kudos to you. Hey, this is awesome.
Yeah, thanks. You might have to have a hockey month after this.
Hey, yeah, I know. I'm going to hear it. So, obviously a big part of this year and going into this season was COVID-19. And I've talked to a lot of other coaches in a lot of sports. So talking to a hockey coach now, it's interesting to hear. One of the things I found so unique was seeing pictures of kids like walking in the parking lot with their hockey bags as a team, basically going on the ice as soon as they walk in from the lobby. So, I mean, just talk about coaching in this. What maybe has changed a little bit in your coaching style, or maybe something you'll do differently going forward that you never really thought about before COVID happened?
Yeah, so this was definitely a tricky year. I mean, for everyone. But with it being my second year, I was ready. I got in my groove last year, kind of, got my feet wet, was ready to go for year two and really start off, on a good note. But COVID made it pretty difficult, just had plans changed and, had to regroup with that. But it was tough, team bonding wise. I would say it was the worst, because the kids miss being on the bus, being in the locker room with each other, and they're getting to the rink 10, 15. That was all we could do, 10 or 15 minutes before a game.
And that's like building chemistry. I mean, locker room is like everything before a game, it's important.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's where like majority of my memories of hockey is, like not winning anything. Trophies didn't even matter. It was in the locker room, just the laughs and camaraderie that you built there. And I mean, it just stinks that they didn't have that this year, but we definitely made the most of it. And we were lucky we had a season that we could play. So at the end of the day, that was, we were lucky with that. But yeah, it was crazy. No bags in the rink. You have to carry your sticks and gloves, and basically got there 10 minutes before, put your skates on, went on the ice. Like, so in between periods, talking to the kids, we're basically, in the hallways. They have chairs set up. The other team's a few feet away. The parents are up in the stands above us or next to us. You had no alone time. So basically only on the bench was where you kind of had the team all together, away from everyone.
You almost just better on the bench, like when they were like cleaning the ice or anything like that.
Yeah, we did that at Matanon. That's how it was there. We just stayed on the bench because they had to get dressed in the stands there.
I mean, that's the first I've heard of all the sports, and hockey definitely seems like it was kind of the wildest as far as, because you're putting on the most equipment. I mean, you definitely put on more hockey equipment than you would football equipment. So, and then obviously skates, you can't walk your blades on the concrete. So, skate guards. I mean, yeah, it was just funny seeing these pictures of everybody in the hallways walking walking in and just ready to go, like an old school, like touch football game in the schoolyard. Like everyone just shows
Yeah.
up and starts playing.
On
So,
the bench too, we could only have 5 players on the bench. We could have 5 players and 2 coaches.
so where
So
was everybody else?
off to the side, either off to the side or behind the bench. They had chairs behind the bench. Like at our home rink, we didn't have, because the stands are right next to the bench. So we had an area basically behind the bench that all the girls were standing. So I mean, that was another tough thing. Girls who don't play a lot or aren't going every other shift, they're in no man's land off to the side. It's like you don't want them to feel left out, but what are you supposed to do
Yeah,
in
I
this
mean, right.
situation?
Like, there's no book on this. So,
Yeah.
what rink was the weirdest rink? I mean, what was like the weirdest setup rink that you guys had that, 5 people on the bench, and then where the heck was everybody else?
Probably our home rink, because they tried to set up stalls too. They thought, oh, we could put up plastic barriers and we could have more girls on the bench, but the state or CDC or whatever didn't allow it. So it didn't even matter. But also coaching wise, we're standing in between 2 stalls. Like we couldn't even move along the bench. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. But
Yeah, that's wild to me, and again, coaching through that, obviously it's not easy, and you're a coach of detail, and obviously you've played it at every level, so you know what you need to do to build your team, build your program, and obviously it's hard to do that when you don't get to see your team a lot. You don't have that locker room chemistry. Everybody's sitting off in the North Pole if they're not on the ice. It's like, what do you do? But again, it's hard to handle, but you probably learned a lot about what you might do more of in the future, or something you might take from this that moving forward you can tweak it and adjust it, especially as things begin to lighten up and change a little bit. Hopefully next hockey season we're not looking at the same setup, or even something different. We have everybody back on the bench and ready to go.
yeah.
One question that I like to ask all my guests on here, and obviously asking you this, is, what's your advice to young females out there? I mean, either whether it's athletes looking to maybe play at that collegiate level, or young ladies that are looking to get into the coaching game. I mean, what would be your advice to them going forward as far as pursuing both of those paths?
Yeah, so I would say if you're a young player, either in high school, college, even youth hockey, if you're even thinking about coaching, watch your coaches as much as you can. Observe them, see what they do. If you're lucky enough, you're always going to have great coaches. Once in a while, there's some not so good coaches out there you might have. You can learn a lot from them too. Things, you might not do as a coach, or things you would do differently, things you see that you like from them. Observe as much as you can, and then once you're out, if you're young, early 20s, around my age, looking to coach, talk to your college coaches, talk to your high school coaches, whoever you saw as a mentor, who you thought was a great coach and you looked up to. Ask them questions, get as much advice from them, because they would love nothing more than to see you go into coaching and teach young players just like they taught you. So they're going to give you that advice and going to lead you in the right direction. So reach out and, talk to your coaches. Definitely.
Who's a coach in your career that, or in your life, that just had such a big influence on you, whether it was in game itself or just maybe out of the game, that just someone that you really kind of looked to a lot and looked up to?
That's definitely a tie between my youth hockey coach, Brian McColgan. He's the coach at Dexter. He, just taught me so much about hockey, and that's definitely where the love of the game came from for me, was him. He was an unbelievable coach. And Brian DeRocher at BU. He taught me more, as a person. He just taught me. I grew a lot learning from him, and came a long way from where I was a freshman to where I am now because of him. So he's a great guy, great coach.
Yeah, and I think that's just really cool, because you're naming two people. I mean, as a young kid in any sport, you play because you love it, right? Like, you're in
Yeah,
love with it. You love everything about it. You love watching it on TV. You love wearing your favorite player's jersey. I mean, like, you fall in love with it. So when you say your youth coach, I mean, that's someone who got you to love that game, and look where it's taking you, and look where you are now as a result of it. So I love that answer. And then obviously collegiately, I love that you mentioned, again, you have a coach that kind of challenges you more from the mental aspect of the game and having you grow
absolutely.
as a person. I mean, that's why coaching is just, it's such an unreal occupation, because you have such power one way or the other. I mean, it can also work the other way. It can be, you have a negative effect on people, and that sometimes can happen in anything. But, every coaching story out there, there's just such positivity of things that go on, and how people might, so much affect somebody's life. And that coach doesn't even realize that they did, or something that they said that sticks into your head, and carries
Absolutely.
with you.
Yeah. So my coach at BU, so I basically went from being top line all 4 years at AC, played a lot, to being fourth line at BU. I was fourth line mostly my whole career there, maybe third line a little bit. So I had to work. I still worked hard all the time at practice, still pushed myself, but I was still on that fourth line. And my coach, if you don't have the best coach, I could have hated the game after that, and never wanted to play again. But he taught me, you got to work hard, and that's where I learned, knowing your role. Not necessarily, I'm not going to be the top line center anymore. I'm not going to be on power play. But just because I'm on fourth line doesn't mean still not part of the team. Still doesn't mean, I can't learn every day, get better, work hard. So, that was huge for me as a player, just to learn that from him. So I'm definitely very grateful for that.
And that's great, because again, like you said, some athletes might look at that and say, this is what the best is for me. Like, why do I want to put the work into this if this is what, could be the best for me? And that, I think, speaks volumes of you, of the type of person you are, the work ethic that you have, and obviously what you bring to the table at Arlington Catholic. I mean, they're really lucky to have you, for sure. And again, the most important thing about it is the development of you, right? I mean, it helped you develop as a person. And like I did in football, I mean, you only can start 11 kids, but it doesn't mean that kids can't give you, reps, and can't get you, we had defensive linemen. I mean, if we started 4, I always said 6 or 7 could play, because you can have kids that can give you 10 to 12 plays if we do a good job of coaching them and teaching them technique, and know that they have to go out there and fill a certain role at a certain time. And those kids end up being the favorite kids you coach, because they work so hard and they understand that role and they take it seriously and they love it. And,
Exactly.
that's infectious. I mean, those are the kids you want on your team. So your coach,
It's just so respectable. Like,
yeah.
you can't not respect that. Like,
Yeah. And he probably has a mutual feeling to you, that he felt the same way about you. That's a person he wants in his program, who works hard, who brings it every single day. And he wants his, the rest of his team to push it like you do. So I'm sure the feeling is mutual and goes both ways. So before we end this, we jump into our 2-minute drill here. And again, this is a popular segment amongst coaches. I'm just going to ask you rapid fire questions, 1 to 2 word answers. Again, we're lenient here. If you want to explain something, we let you. I mean, we're not going to cut you off, but, fun questions that get you to really think. And I promise nothing that you're going to be like, oh my God, why are you asking me this question? Okay. So it's fun. Coaches give me great feedback on it. And here we go. So let me set my timer, and here we go. And I'll ask you this first question as a player. What team in the CCL did you want to beat real bad as a player? And I know you're a coach now, so we have
St.
to
Mary's.
say, is it the same feeling as a coach? Is St. Mary's the team that you got to beat?
As a coach, I would say Austin Prep.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
interesting. 2
That
different.
is the goal.
I mean, and truthfully, as a football coach in the CCL, those are the 2 teams you wanted to beat, because you knew what you were getting with those teams. So,
Oh yeah.
song that still gets you pretty juiced up before a game starts.
I have the Tiger.
Okay. I love it. I get different answers for this all the time. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to ask you this next question in 2 parts. Toughest high school arena you ever played in, and toughest college arena you ever played in?
High school, I guess just Stoneham during playoffs, if that counts, because that's just always rocking.
Absolutely.
In college, Minnesota. We played in Minnesota a few times, and their stadium fills up.
Yeah, I just feel like there's something with just Massachusetts and Minnesota. It's just like the 2 M states that love their hockey, and like hockey's
Their
life.
crowd is insane. Crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
wild. 1 word to describe your coaching behavior on the bench.
Coaching behavior. I don't know. Determined, I guess.
I love it. You know, I always get passionate. That's what coaches always give me passion. It's like, come on, give me
I
something more than
watched one where someone said passionate, so I couldn't say that.
that. I get it. It's like such a unique word and you can use it in so many different areas, but I love when
Yeah.
coaches kind of say something different. So that's great. How would you play? Give me one word your players would use to describe you on the sideline or on the bench.
I think they would say quiet,
Okay.
even
Interesting.
though because I kind of save it for in between periods. I like to observe, let them do their thing, and then in between periods is where I lay it on pretty good.
Do you
Not
yell?
not like
Are you a ref yeller on the bench?
no.
Okay.
Definitely not. But I'll save that for one or two moments when it needs, it needs to come out, and then they know
And
I mean business.
that's the most effective way. I mean, truthfully, I wasn't a
Yeah.
big yeller and screamer, but when I was, it was effective, and I think that
Mhm.
that was my style. So I agree with you totally. Um, Most memorable moment at Walter Brown. I know you have a lifetime there as a player, but also just as a spectator and being there. What was something that you don't really forget being there?
I scored one of my only few goals in overtime against Minnesota when they were
Oh,
ranked number 2 in the country. So that was a huge win for us.
that's huge. That's huge street cred right there. That's huge street cred. I love it. I absolutely love it. And last question I'll ask you is: when you were a player, what was your breakaway move? You had a breakaway. What was your move?
I didn't have moves.
So you
I
just
just tried
kind
to
of
root it top shelf. That's it. I
that's
didn't
it.
have hands. I didn't have dangles. I would just try and shoot.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, listen, you survived the 2-minute drill. And I want to thank you for coming on here. I think that you bring a lot to the table. And I know a few years back coaching football at Arlington Catholic, when you got the girls hockey job, I thought it was a great hire. And I think that that's what the school really needs. They need alumni in there that have energy, that want to take the programs to the next level or take it to the levels of when they were there before, when they were as a player. So I loved, obviously the hire. I thought it was great. And to get you on this podcast today in such an awesome month of May, of the guests that we have coming forward, we were really lucky to get you on here today and really hear your
Thanks.
story. AC is a really lucky place to have you.
Oh, thanks. Well, I appreciate it, and I'm glad you're doing this Women's Month too. Definitely means a lot to us female athletes. So, and thanks for having me on here too. I know you had Coach of the Decade on before me, so
Tough
for
shoes to
me
follow,
being
huh?
only a 2-year coach, I'm glad you have both ends of the spectrum, and I'm glad I could be on here with you.
Yeah, coaching's coaching, and I think what's just so unique is I've been keeping a notebook here. I've been doing this almost for 8 months, and I legit probably have like 15, 16 pages of notes, not every single line, bullet points or whatever, but just things that I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. Like, if I ever get back into coaching, these some things I would love to implement just from not even on the field thing, just off the field, building team, building culture, things like that programs did. And I take
Yeah,
everything from everybody. So, like I said, we were really honored to have you on here. And I got to give love to AC people. I always do. Alumni, coaches there, whatever. Whenever we get a chance to get someone from AC, I love getting them on here. So it was pretty
okay.
exciting. And again, anything you need down the road too, definitely as an alum, please feel free to reach out. And I really look
Awesome.
forward to watching your career there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on here.
Awesome. All right. So from Beyond Podcast, I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis. Till next time.